Hello, this is Writers at Work, a podcast for readers and writers about the joys, heartaches, challenges, and satisfaction of the creative writing process. I'm your host, Jim Fusilli. Joining me on this episode of Writers at Work is playwright Larissa Fasthorse, whose timely comedy, Fake It Until You Make It, is currently at the Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. Larissa, who is a recipient of a MacArthur Fellowship, was the first Native American woman to have a play produced on Broadway. That satirical comedy, the Thanksgiving play, has been produced more than 300 times. Her revision of Peter Pan is currently on tour throughout the U.S. A member of the Sicangu Nation from South Dakota, she began her public career as a dancer and choreographer. After an injury, she began writing with an interest in Native American drama, both film and theater. She co-founded Indigenous Direction, a consulting firm that helps people and organizations who want to create accurate work by, for, and with Indigenous peoples. She is currently the vice chairman of the board of trustees of Playwrights Horizon, a not-for-profit off-Broadway theater in New York City. There's much to discuss with Larissa, including the plays she's developing for the Public, Second Stage, and Yale Rep, among other theaters, and Fake It Until You Make It, a slapstick comedy with a pointed social and political theme. So let's begin. Larissa Fasthorse, welcome to Writers at Work.
I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Before we delve into your writing, I must ask you about your state of mind when you realized that your career in dance was likely at its end. Had you already been writing?
Well, I've been writing all of my life, but never in any organized way, like not really in script form, not really in any particular thing. I always processed the way I looked at the world and the way I thought about things and the way I wanted to communicate with people through writing. So I would always been writing.
So did you suddenly think, well, maybe I can make a career about this?
Actually, I got a lot of help with that. So dancers retire, really early. And so I was 30 years old and retiring. And there's an organization called Career Transitions for Dancers that gives dancers amazing support, career counselors and things to help you find the next chapter. And they help me organize my writing into something.
Oh. What appealed to you about the writing life?
I had been, as a dancer, you're very much a tool, right? So you're the tool to someone else's creativity and you're the tool to someone else's process. And it was really time for me, especially as an Indigenous woman. It wasn't enough to just be like the only Indigenous tool, like I needed to be the person wielding the tools. And so that was really exciting to me to become that person now.
Was it always going to be theater or film, or did you think about prose?
Yeah, no, it was, I lived in Los Angeles. That's where my husband's from. So I thought it was going to be film and TV. That's what I did first because it was just natural to do that there. And then quickly became disillusioned with film and TV and ended up in theater and never wanted to leave.
Do you recall the first bit that you wrote that really satisfied you, that gave you a glimpse of what could be?
Oh, gosh. I think I just wrote that last month.
Oh, no.
Literally.
No, no.
No, really.
Really?
I've never, it's the first time I've written a play where I finished it and I said to my husband, I was like, I'm actually excited about this. I'm never excited about things when I write them. And I mean, I'm excited about the concept of it and I'm excited about the doing of it, but I'm never excited about what I've done. I was like, okay, well, I have something I can fix. And I was at the Hermitage retreat last month, and I really think oh no, it's February. Gosh, it's April already. It was in February, so it's a month and a half ago, and it was the first time I wrote something where I was like, wow, I think this is really something. I'm proud of it.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to argue with you, but not right away. Not right. I don't want
Okay.
So I read a quote from you. When I make a change, it's just words to me. But that's a physical reality to the people on stage and backstage who make it happen. I understand what you're saying there, but I'm not sure that it's accurate because it's not just words for you, is it?
Well, yes and no, right? I mean, I think what I mean, in that is that my first mentor, Skip Mercier, or one of my first mentors, he always said, that theater is a physical art form. So that's the difference for us, right? I think it's very easy for us as writers to honestly, yeah, they are just words. I mean, I don't get that precious about words. I don't get that precious about lines. I don't get that precious about these things because as long as the ultimate concept of what I'm trying to get across, the ultimate questions I'm trying to elicit in an audience are coming through, I'm not that picky about every single moment. And so, if my changing these words, which is very easy to do in just a moment of deleting and retyping, causes difficulty or actual physical pain or danger to people backstage, that's not worth it, right? Those
Right,
words
right.
are not worth it. And then they are just words and they're not that important because, theater is different in that we have people putting their physical lives on the line and people do get hurt. People get killed in theater. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a dangerous field in many ways. And it's a physical field that they have to repeat over and over and over again, day after day after day. And so I feel like, it's my responsibility to not get precious about my words when it comes at the expense of people's humanity and bodies.
Okay, I get you. I get you.
Yeah.
Um, I ask because when I was watching Fake It Until You Make It, I noticed that despite all the zaniness on stage, your words really foreshadowed much of what was revealed. And that is not easy to do. I mean, you have to be very careful about
Yeah.
what characters say and do so you fulfill the audience's anticipated reaction.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the original, dramaturgy, right? And that's being a dramatist and being able to use the skill and the craft to make sure that the structure I've set up can withstand all these other people showing up, right? So that's actually the
Right,
skill of a
right, right.
dramatist is we have to ahead of time say, okay, literally 200 people are going to have their hands on this at some point. I have to make a structure that will, and for months and months and months, sometimes years, I have Peter Pan going now for a year and a half, thousands of people have had their hands on that. And so I have to make a structure as a dramatist way before all that and that time alone with the computer that can withstand all of that and still get what I need to get across while also making it safe for others and allowing room for their creativity and brilliance.
Yeah. I should explain to our listeners what I meant by zaniness.
Mhm.
The play is a farce that at its core is about identity, and particularly who is and isn't Native American. Um, but I found it wonderful that in this madcap situation, and as you know, farce usually requires at least one or two characters who are idiots. But you gave each of your characters their own sense of dignity, and so how did you do that?
I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot to me. I mean, I really do spend an incredible amount of time in each of my characters' brains, because
Right,
I figure, I don't know, I don't like writing a throwaway character. I don't like writing a character that is, all anything, because that's not how people are, right? And
right,
whoever, the biggest, real life villain is not the villain in their story.
right.
They believe in what they believe in. So I do spend a lot of time just figuring out like the whole whys and the reasoning and how everyone got to where they are in this moment that we choose to put on stage, which is always like the heightened moment of their life, right? And
Right.
so I need to understand all those things beforehand to know why they truly believe in this and why they're sticking to their guns and why they're acting the way they're acting. So it really matters to me that even the most maybe out there characters we can all recognize because it's humanity, right? And that's the beautiful thing theater and art and writing can do is make us see humanity in places we wouldn't normally expect to see it.
Yeah. I confess to ignorance about the concept of race shifting as it applies
Mm-hmm.
to indigenous people. I mean, so this was a tutorial for me
Mm-hmm.
as well. But for our listeners, apparently there was a spike in the number of people who claimed to be Native American in the last census. And maybe
Yeah, huge.
they're like a 16th indigenous, but they're claiming to be Native American. I had never heard that term pretendians before. What a great term. Um, what do you think is behind that movement?
Well, here's the thing. We've always had it. So we've always had pretendians in our community from the very beginning, since the first folks showed up here and started adopting our super cool clothes and our super cool ways of engaging with this country, with the actual land of this country. We've always had people, there have been Indigenous societies from the very beginning of the United States of America. There have been people who have passed as us. Now, there's a difference, right? Because every Native American sovereign nation in what's now called the United States has a political ability to determine who has membership in their sovereign nation. So that's one thing, right? But we also have a lot of people that we have accepted into our communities over the years before we had that political designation with the United States, which only happened in the 1900s. So we had a lot of folks that were brought into our communities in different ways. Unfortunately, what a pretendian is someone who is claiming that sort of identity or that sort of adoption without actually having any connection to an Indigenous community, or many cases no connection to any Indigenous biology of any kind. It's just family lore that they've created and passed down, and now they have created an entire career on it. It's incredibly popular in academia. It's incredibly popular in entertainment. A lot of people look back to like the crying Indian guy back in the, what was it, 70s, I think. That was very common. Lots and lots of people that we think were Native American actors that shaped Native Americana in popular culture were not Native American at all. And it was a very common thing to do, and
Yeah.
continues to be.
Yeah. So as a writer, there's so many ways you could have gone with this, right? This concept, on one hand, it's perfect for satire and farce.
Yeah.
Yet it could be written as tragedy, correct?
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah.
From one perspective, I mean, someone just popping up and claiming to be Native American is, it's an insult to your culture.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you have but who is this person who doesn't want to be who he is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really common, right? I mean, I think there's, American Caucasian identity just wants to be cooler, like
I guess
they want to be something else, I guess. I'm not entirely, I mean, I don't have the same affliction, but in talking to people, it's just, it's cool. It seems like something awesome and amazing. And we are awesome, and we wear really cool stuff, and we get away with like really cool things. I think there's just a lack of like, because America is, was started as the United States of America, I'm talking about the country, was started as, the melting pot. People lost an attachment to a specific culture. And there isn't really a new thing. You can't just say, I'm white American culture. It just doesn't seem like enough for a lot of people. And they don't have an attachment to something else. After they came through Ellis Island, their names were changed and they have no idea, what their background is except for on 23andMe. So they claim what's here, and they claim what's nearby and what they feel connected to, because they of course feel connected to these lands. They've been here for many generations. But there's a difference between having a beautiful connection to this land that we all share here and appropriating someone else's identity.
Right. Appropriating, yes, as opposed to showing deep appreciation and wanting to be part of it.
Yeah. And like, that's one thing, I work so much in Indigenous communities, and I bring all these different art makers with me, and they're endlessly amazed. They're like, oh my gosh, they're so welcoming, and they just let you in, and suddenly there's people in ceremonies, and like, it takes so little to like show up and participate and be of service to an Indigenous community here on this continent, and get to have those beautiful experiences, because we're very, most of our communities are very open to sharing those. Some are not, because they've been burned so badly that they just say, that's it, we're not doing that anymore. But it's actually pretty easy to get in touch with the folks on whose land you live on.
There's so many clever and well-concealed twists and fake it until you make it that I really want to be careful about not giving too much away. But you have two characters who are ostensibly white. River, who provides funding for Indigenous organizations, and Theo, who is a well-meaning, save the earth type. So how did you develop them? I ask because they're much more than functional. They could have been just functional, but they really have depth to them. And I got caught up in their dilemmas.
Yeah, great. Yay, that makes me happy. Go me. Yeah. No, I think it's, one, I know these people, right? I live with these people. I work with these people. There's so many, Native American serving organizations that are founded by white folks who I do truly believe, want to do and are doing an incredible amount of good. However, the system that we have in the United States continues to favor those people and give them access and funding that Native American run organizations still don't have, right? And so now they're kind of in this quandary of like, well, I've done all this good, I've devoted my life to this, but they're starting to realize, should I be? Is there some way to pass that access and that accumulation of wealth away from whiteness, which
Right,
it's
right,
actually really
right.
hard to do in this country. Yeah. And I do get that, like, they care and they don't want these programs to go away because they're good programs and they're helping people. So it's a really complicated place to be in right now. Theo, he's everywhere.
No, but that, this is getting back to the use of words, specific words.
Hmm.
There was such a wonderful moment early on in the play in which, in my opinion, you summarized Theo in a single line. He says, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to miss my bus." I mean, of course, he's going to take a bus.
Yes, he
He's
wants to do right for the
that's right.
environment.
But can we talk about Grace? I think Grace
Yeah.
is like shot to the top of my favorite characters
Hmm.
list. Um, she's an attorney with what she describes as an activist Native American serving organization, but that organization doesn't do what we think it's going to be doing when we first meet her. It's an organization that helps people change their identities. And you have Grace appearing wearing different clothes and using gestures of various different races. It's such a terrific device. I mean, how did you come up with that?
Yeah, I'll be honest, my playwright friend Bruce Norris has been really on me to write about pretendians for a while, and he's always sending me articles. I was like, dude, I'm gonna get there. Just give me a minute. So I do give him credit for really putting me on it, and we got into because he does a lot of research. So he's just sending me a lot of stuff, and I got into people that are race shifters. There is a race shifting initiative, I guess you'd say, a movement in the United States of people, not just white folks like Rachel Dolezal that become Black, but of people of various ethnicities that shift to other races that they feel more called to. And they have two things in common when I started researching these people and chatting with them online. One is this real, honest belief in what they do and their belief in their right to do what they're doing. But the other thing they almost all had in common was a very difficult childhood in some way,
Uh,
and or being, talking about being rejected by their community or their family, and it's like, wow, this is really sad. I mean, psychology wise, it was very clear why they don't want to be who they are. And I was like, well, I can't just write, jokingly about these people because they're sad. And so I wanted Grace to have that humanity to her. She has
right.
this really strange and interesting way of viewing the world, but she's trying to do it in a better way. She's trying to do it without causing harm to others, and she has been damaged in some way. And so I wanted to bring all those, complex sides to her. And then also, of course, we're in a farce. So everything's immediately heightened and bigger and broader.
Well, every time I noticed in the audience that every time the door opened and Grace came out in different apparel, the
Mhm.
audience just was uplifted by her appearance. That just
Yeah.
yeah, she's so great. Anyway, you address identity shifting in many forms. I'm thinking about the character of Mark. There's a question whether he's a vegetarian because Grace saw him eating a chicken sandwich, right?
Yes. Important identifiers, right?
Right, right. But you also address one character is apparently gay. He fits a certain stereotype. But then enters another character who either is or isn't. So, you're talking about shifting in a lot of ways in the play.
Yeah, and actually, Chris is not necessarily gay. Chris is two spirit. So, Chris, which is different than gay, two spirit means a fluidity of gender identity. It does not necessarily mean anything as far as sexuality. And Chris is very clear that they are open to sort of all genders and sexualities. I would say, because two spirit is if you want to say, non-binary, but it's even broader than that. But because it is a more of a multi-gendered position, it's really hard to define sexuality. So I'd say gay is a very limiting term that doesn't actually apply to them. They're much more expansive than that. But which is also right. It's a hard thing to get across and a hard thing to talk about, which is why a lot of these things, made sense for farce and for satire because there's such long, deep things that could be a tragedy, that could be this really heady play and teach you all kinds of things. And to me, that's just as a dramatist, that's just not fun. And as an
Yeah.
audience goer, that's not fun. I don't want to go sit there and have to take notes on a play. I want to go and have a great time with people, but also come out having learned things and wondered about things and not known about things. And so, putting them together in that way is really, I think, helpful for everybody, including
Well,
me.
that was certainly my experience. I mean, I laughed. I had a great time, but afterwards, I remember thinking, what? Why didn't I know more about this? I don't know anything really
Yay.
about this. This is. I don't know the answer to this question, which I guess is why I'm asking it. But do you have any input whatsoever on casting in a play like this?
Yes, I have, as a writer, I have final on all casting and
Because
directors.
Grace is Native American,
Mhm.
and I thought that added an extra dimension to the fact that she was shifting into these different um, characters
Mhm.
to get across the point. Also, Chris, boy, was a strikingly good-looking guy.
Yes. The whole cast is beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's
Or
true. That's true.
intimidating.
When Chris walked on the stage, I say, "Oh my."
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
anyway, as you can tell, I could go on and on about fake it until you make
Mhm.
it. But let me ask you, what's next for you?
Mhm.
Can you talk about the projects you're working on?
Yeah, I have way too many, which is fantastic. Little brain blending, melt. Sorry, I have way too many, which is fantastic, but a little bit brain melting. I am the same director, Michael John Garces, and I are heading to, or in, sorry, I can't talk right now. The same, my director, Michael John Garces, and I are heading to the Public Theater in New York to work on our adaptation of Orinoco by Afro Bren that we're doing for them. We're doing it through a hybrid community engaged um, process within new play development. It's an experiment for everybody. We're seeing how it's going. We're early in it. We'll see what happens. He and I are also working on my brand new horror play, Makoche, up
Oh,
at Yale. Yeah, it's going to be at Yale Rep. It just turned in the first draft. My first time working in that genre, which I'm really excited about.
wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So we're doing that one
What?
too.
Oh, I have to ask why? Why horror? What's the appeal?
Well, honestly, Michael John, my longtime creative partner, has been pushing me to write a horror play for a while. I think, it took me a while to figure it out why he was saying this. He often sees these things. He's the one who told me to write a farce, right?
Okay.
So I think, as my partner, he's like watching my process from the outside and saying, oh, nudging me here and there. And he's been nudging me toward horror for a while. And I didn't get it because I'm not a horror fan at all. I don't watch violent films. I don't watch horror. I do like zombies though. And so it was interesting because this play is one that I've been trying to do for a while, dealing with a particular Native American war that happened in history. And I kept trying to do it as a historical play, and it was just blah. And here's the most important thing to me, though, besides it being boring, was kept threatening to turn into trauma porn, right? Where
Oh boy.
a bunch of white folks are going to show up and watch these horrible things that happened in this war to a bunch of Native people and feel really good about themselves for watching it. You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
was
Yeah.
really like I was really like, oh, this is awful. Like I don't want this to happen. And I realized in this play that I could use horror as a way to um, let people come in and actually revel in that sort of enjoyment of trauma and terrible things happening to people without understanding what they're watching, and then the play turns and it changes pretty drastically.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, thanks.
My guest.
Yeah, and then I'm also working on, I'm sorry, I forgot,
No,
I'm also
no,
working on like
please.
2 TV shows and another play for Broadway and all kinds of other stuff. But yeah,
Well, when I was looking at your bio, I was thinking this woman must do a lot of writing on airplanes.
I do. Yes.
Okay. My guest has been Larissa Fasthorse, playwright, creative force, MacArthur Fellow, a voice for Indigenous people, and a very, very busy writer. Larissa, thank you so much for joining me on Writers at Work.
Oh, it's been really great speaking with you. Thanks.
Writers at Work is a production of Bliss Publications. Erin Mitchell is our producer. Music is by Joni Mitchell, performed by Keith Jarrett. For more, see writersatworkpodcast.com. I'm your host, Jim Fusilli. Until next time, happy reading.